That first job I got fired from, that scared the shit out of me. I've never applied for a job, like ever. All application tracking systems are just a freaking racket. You can have a great product, an incredible team, an incredibly successful CEO, and you can still fail. It is my point of view that is a primary driver of business for me. If everyone now has super intelligence at their fingertips, isn't it all about people at the end of the day?
Hello, this is the Little Pursuits podcast, where we have conversations with founders and builders creating something they believe in. I'm your host, Dar Patel, an executive coach for founders. Today, I'm joined by Haris Butt. Haris is a designer and technologist working at the frontier of AI product and systems. He's led and worked on products at Square, Notion, and ClickUp. He now builds and advises companies rethinking how this frontier is applied in new and exciting ways. Let's get into it. Hey, Haris, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me today. To start off with, I like to take my audience back to your journey of when you were a kid or in high school, and what were the things you were interested in exploring at that time. So if you could just maybe take us back to give us some context of just the things you were interested in.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to. Man, high school. That's pretty far.
I
Makes me feel
know.
old. High school, honestly, I wish I could say that I was super intentional or like driven, but truth is, like, I grew up in Southern California, spent a lot of my time outdoors playing sports, and to my good fortune, I got to kind of see the internet come to life from the early dial-up days to high-speed internet to even having a Wi-Fi network in your home not being plugged in all the time. And over the course of those kind of core technologies coming to life, I just became obsessed, I love music. I was like one of the first kids in high school to have like an iPod, but I never really kind of saw anything as industry or career or opportunity. It was just more, I love tinkering on my computer. I love stealing music online, burning CDs. Like
Yeah.
I love making album art, so I had to like steal copies of Photoshop. And so it wasn't until later on after college that I kind of saw technology as an opportunity. But I think just, being really lucky to see that all come to life in my early childhood is what kind of enchanted my imagination and really got me excited about the future. Quite, I
Yeah.
don't think there's any better way to put it. You just kind of daydream, and when I was a little kid, I really loved cars. And over the course of even cars getting nicer and faster and cooler, you saw things like cell phones come into a car. You saw things like satellite radio come into a car. And
Mhm.
you began to think, well, when I have a car, what am I going to be able, am I going to, is my car going to be a computer? Is my car, going to have all kinds of bells and whistles? And so that carried on pretty well into my early adulthood,
Mm.
but didn't really strike me as something I could pursue as a career path until after college, actually.
Yeah, no, going back that far, it is really interesting how fast we've evolved our technology.
Yeah, and honestly,
It's kind of
I think that
fast, yeah.
the other thing was it was kind of like no, I was really lucky. My parents were like super hands off and just let me do whatever I wanted to do. And
Hmm.
so the side effect of that was like there wasn't anyone in my life that was like, well, you can make a career out of this. So I kind of just got to pursue it as an interest and a hobby. And then when I kind of ran out of options after pursuing a path and like going the pre-med route,
Hmm.
you kind of lean on your interests and your hobbies as like the thing that you're good at or the thing that you feel like you can turn into something that you can do for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So you were interested in technology. How did you kind of land on pre-med as your college career then?
I mean, it was just easy. Like you're just I come from a Pakistani family. Both my mom and dad are Pakistani. Grew up in a, predominantly Pakistani Arab community.
Mhm.
everyone around me was a doctor, and
Mm,
you probably heard all the cultural stereotypes, but it was
yeah.
just kind of like I don't really like thinking a lot about things that I don't want to think about. And
Mm,
so to me it was you do good in school so you can get into like good programs, you get into good programs so you get a good job and
mm,
you know so on and so forth, but there was never really the at least I never had that ambition to think, what do I want to do with, like what is my time worth
mm.
and such until much later on. Yeah.
Okay. So did you finish with a pre-med like bachelor's and then like pivot into tech, or how did that
Yeah,
happen?
I mean, getting into med school, you kind of just sit there with this reality like, oh, okay, I'm about to spend the next 8 to however many years of my life
Mhm.
continuing down this path. And there were a lot of other things going on in my life too, where, I just kind of sat there and asked myself why I was even doing this anymore and who I was even doing it for. And that kind of led me to the decision that I had to do something else,
Mm,
and that was
yeah.
really scary,
Yeah.
putting so many years into school
Mhm.
and then just kind of last minute having this realization that you don't want to do it to begin with. And yeah, I just kind of from there on out, even to now, I just started following my gut
Mm,
around what kinds of questions can I be asking to get me closer and closer to what I love doing, which is, designing software products, like working with like emerging technologies and kind of creating something new from scratch. And yeah, that's it. I wish it was more sophisticated than that, but that's all that's all it really was. I love computers, I love technology, and I was very lucky to be in a position where I could just pursue that and
yeah.
figure out what that even meant in a way that is unique and relevant and interesting to me. And that, brought me to San Francisco to
Mhm.
my first job, which was working at like a marketing startup, like small shop.
Mhm.
But yeah, I never really thought too much about it, to be honest. Even today, I just took myself wherever the wind would take me, really.
No, I think that's really brave. I think stepping out of like other people's expectation of what they want you to do and saying, this actually doesn't feel right for me. I need to go and explore something else. Right. And so, starting in marketing, were you working with startups already or were you working with bigger companies? What was your experience like in that first role?
Let's see. I mean, I worked at the Apple Store in college,
Hmm.
and that was super fun.
Yeah.
My first job was in high school. I
Uh-huh.
was a barista at Starbucks, and my teacher at the time hooked me up with the job. I'm fairly convinced she hooked me up with it so that she could swing by and get free lattes when I, look back at it. But
Yeah.
I really loved working at Starbucks. Like I really, really loved it a lot. I still to this day look back at those times and think to myself how much I just really enjoyed making people's day and giving them a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It was oddly satisfying. The service industry in general, it's like, I have a lot of empathy for people who serve others,
Hmm.
especially in like the mundane things
Yeah.
like eating out, getting your car fixed and such. It's such like a deeply personal experience, deeply human and personal experience. And it was the
Yeah.
same thing at Apple too, like the best technology brand on the planet. And even to this day, I think those two companies really taught me everything I needed to know about what I wanted to do in the future. Like
Mm.
it was equal parts people and equal parts technology. And, I was really good with software and computers. Like I knew how to hack on things. So getting to San Francisco, working at a startup, you do everything at a startup.
Mm.
You don't really,
Yeah.
you kind of thrive in being a generalist.
Mhm.
Um, but that first job I got fired from,
Okay.
yeah, that scared the shit out of me. But I wasn't too proud of it. I definitely lost my cool and felt
Mm.
like I was being disrespected in a way that I just couldn't tolerate.
Yeah.
And so I just blew a gasket. And then I was like, oh shit, I am in San Francisco. Now I really got to figure things out.
Yeah. So you've gotten fired. What's happening in your thought process is like, okay, what's my next step? Like, what am I interested in doing next?
Well, first I was really angry, I think,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
but I've been saying this a lot lately, just reflecting on the past, but like I feel like the universe is really good at making all the difficult decisions in life for you,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I've been saying that too much lately, but I do really believe it, where like I knew that's not, it was kind of just, it was just a stepping stone. And I think
Mm,
that's kind of how I've seen my entire career, even up until today, where
yeah.
I've never really thought of what do I do now, or, what do I turn into my career? It's just like, what do I
Mhm.
want to learn next? You know,
Okay.
where,
That's
like,
a really good
who do
question.
I want? Yeah. And you just
Mhm.
reach out, like my whole, yeah. As soon as that happened, I just started thinking about, what I wanted to learn. I know the things that I like once I think the cool thing about, at least the cool thing about the internet and technology to me, was that once a skill was acquired, well, one,
Mhm.
it was really easy to acquire a skill if you know how to ask good questions and seek people out. Like information was readily at your disposal, which was really neat. And I
Mhm.
really thrive in that kind of environment.
Mhm.
And then the second thing was kind of just like once you have that skill, it's really easy to see where else you can apply it. So for me, it was, you know, I had solid fluency in a lot of different areas of computing,
Mhm.
or just software in general. And so I started thinking about all the companies that got me excited. And so the next place that took me was Square, actually, which
Mhm.
was super dope. I got to work supporting the products there. And that was awesome. I still remember when I was at the Apple store, we used to use these like really shitty Microsoft POS systems, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
they were always broken. The software was terrible. It was just, for everything that Apple stood for, I thought the irony that you had to check out on a Microsoft system was just hilarious. And through my time there in college, they swapped that out for the Apple Pay system. So they
Mm.
turned the old iPod Touches into payment terminals, which I thought was really cool. And they came with these like cases. And then I just remember watching someone like stock the shelves one night, and the little square reader, I don't know if you've ever seen the original one, was
Mm.
being put up on these like little flimsy card cases. And I was like, what is that? And the whoever the person was like, oh, you can accept credit cards from your cell phone now. And I
Wow.
just
Yeah.
remember sitting there thinking to myself, what in the hell? Like that is the like wow.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I was just absolutely blown away that all of a sudden every like smartphone on the planet could be a payment terminal. You
Mhm.
know, I was so lucky coming to San Francisco. Square is based out of San Francisco by chance, and I just like
Mhm.
end up there. And then you get to see the people working. I got to see like Square Cash is like what their primary revenue driver now, right? But I got to see the small team in the corner of the office operating like a startup,
Mhm.
with like, Jack Dorsey standing 5 feet away from me, the head
Mhm.
of engineering, the head of hardware. And you just see these brilliant people doing what they do best. And,
Yeah.
I think people don't put enough like emphasis on how much you can learn by just observing. Just
Yeah.
being within the presence of like really smart, intelligent people, having the opportunity to ask them questions, even if you're not working alongside them. And
Mhm.
you know, at that point, when I saw how the Square Cash team was operating inside of this, Square was 850, 900 person company at the time, and it moved slow, moved
Mm.
really, really slow. Just
Mhm.
like it felt like an enterprise company. Oh,
Mm.
really? Like it was beautiful,
Mhm.
pristine, almost like an Apple like environment. But,
Mhm.
Apple's thousands of employees, offices worldwide.
Yeah.
And this is like, maybe two or three offices and 850 people. And seeing these guys just kind of change the world from right in front of me really, really got me excited about like what a startup
Mm.
means, and like how you're supposed to operate and think about taking things to market and going from 0 to 1 and such. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's basically the entire story.
No, thank you for sharing that. Like in that role in Square, was it a product design role or like what
No,
was your
no, no, no. It was like a product analyst, product support kind of role. It
Okay.
was like kind of just taking up like a bunch of different like projects here and there. And for
Mhm.
me, it was, I mean, I don't like being put in a box.
Yeah.
So, you know, the first project was like we were trying to streamline the efficiency of our support operations.
Mhm.
So getting to work on that project first was cool. And then Square Cash was spinning up. So supporting that, feeding like early feedback data and analyzing things. And
Mhm.
I had my hands in a couple like analytics projects as well, reporting projects, because I wanted to move over to the data science team. But yeah, it's
Okay.
just first time kind of getting into consumer products, really. I didn't actually get into product design until after the job that fall. Well, actually, like doing it as a career and getting paid to do it. I didn't do it until like the following year,
Okay.
actually. And that's when I kind of 2 years later, actually. Yeah, 2 years later.
Okay.
Because I started doing like freelance stuff on the side just to make more money because I
Mhm.
wasn't making a lot at Square and San Francisco was expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole product design stuff, I think that's really interesting too, actually, because I'd been designing things since I was like 14. And
Mhm.
once again, I had no idea because even when I moved out here, there weren't product design was not a software product design was not like a field. Wasn't like a
Mm.
practice. If you were a designer, right, it was like
Mhm.
pseudo engineering, pseudo graphics design type roles where like if you were kind of good at these things, you could also do this.
Mhm.
But that also I was very fortunate to kind of grow into as it became like a field of practice.
Mm.
Like there, a lot of people would sum it up into, you know, moving a bunch of shapes around the screen, but it very quickly became like behavioral science,
Yeah.
and it kind of also became business, like equal parts business strategy as well,
Mhm.
as you had to learn how to play to each platform and different kinds of audiences and different mechanisms, and
Mhm.
you kind of had to build this fluency as the market matured and as like SaaS products became a thing of their own.
Cool. In terms of like what your biggest takeaway from that role was, I know you mentioned a few things, but if looking back, right, from Square, what was that like one lesson where you're like, I really learned this at Square?
Just jump, you know,
Mm.
like
Mhm.
it's like the first moving out to San Francisco, it was kind of like I don't think there was like much courage
Mhm.
involved. It was kind of just like why not,
Yeah.
you know? But then once you're at Square and you're at a good company, and for me it was kind of like, you're surrounded by all these impressive people who went to all these like impressive schools, and it's, probably it's kind of Game of Thrones and political on the inside.
Mhm.
I don't like climbing ladders. I don't believe in corporate systems and such. So
Yeah.
you're kind of programmed to believe that you're supposed to like settle in, really work hard, and kind of kind of play the game to make your way up top.
Mhm.
And here I am at a really great company, and I'm just like, shit, like I don't want to fucking spend I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to curse, but I don't know if I want to spend the next like, 4 or 5 years here. This is
Mhm.
so slow.
Yeah.
And so it was the same thing. I learned an enormous amount just reaching out
Mhm.
to everyone and anyone that I could. I made great friends. I met my actual co-founder of the startup that I would have a crack at
Mhm.
Square.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? You just gotta like, yeah, this is cool, and you'll
Mhm.
probably do well here, but like, you just gotta go, you
Mm.
know? And my good friend had introduced me to the former CEO of Groupon,
Mhm.
and he was doing a new thing called Detour.
Mhm.
He runs a company called Descript. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've heard of it, but
Yeah.
they do like
I do. I have heard of it. Yeah.
so like I worked on that,
Yeah.
that was spun out of a failing startup that was sold to Bose,
Yeah.
and I jumped, I was like, oh, cool. Here's a guy that has taken a company public. He's
Mhm.
working on something new again. Probably has
Mhm.
a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he
Yeah.
does. Um, and that was the next thing I sunk my teeth into, kind of
Hmm.
working on product growth. And I worked on that for a year. And it was the same thing. You kind of just put yourself out there. One of my closest friends from San Francisco had actually also moved out, and he at the time was brought on as the product designer there. So he was actually the main one that kind of got me started to like open my eyes to like software product design because he's
Hmm.
just like a very talented graphic designer,
Hmm.
and he had worked for an agency out in Arizona. But yeah, that's took me to the next step where it was just
Yeah.
like kind of jump and work alongside of a friend and someone else that I find to be really impressive and capable. Start again.
Yeah. So for product growth, what are some things you learned about that, especially in early stage startup? What's important there?
Oh, you just have to sit right next to the customer. I think that's
Mm.
just like it's just a dumb like honestly, it's kind of hilarious. Like all of the most valuable things you'll ever come to realize if you're working in startups are like the simplest things ever.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like you want to believe that as an innovator, you just have to be a Steve Jobs or a Elon Musk and such. But
Hmm.
there's just like a lot of really basic things revolving around listening really, really well, be it your peers, your customers, your partners. And usually the insights you gain from listening to those audiences are what kind of expose you to those aha moments. You know,
Yeah.
with the startup, it was called Detour. We're building like a Google Maps for storytelling, so you could walk
Mm.
around. It was like truly magical, the same way you get directions from your phone. Imagine being told a story related relative to where you are in the world.
Oh, that's
And
cool. Yeah.
yeah, it was super cool. I still remember to this day before I joined the company, I was standing on Market Street and I put on one of their tours, and I just remember it started and it had you like pointing in a certain direction, and it starts by saying like looking down Market Street, and it like has you look at the exact thing that you're
Hmm.
looking at and observing certain things, and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, this is magical. And
Hmm.
sometimes things are too early.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are great and require a certain kind of, network effect and such. But it really taught me a valuable lesson about, there's no single thing that attributes to you can have a great product, an incredible team, a incredibly successful CEO, and you can still fail,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which was kind of crazy. We had tons of advantages that lots of other people wouldn't have.
Hmm.
And even despite the fact we couldn't make it work, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the hard part of it and the risk that you take with building something new, right? Like either it is going to be meeting the moment and the audience and the customer, or maybe people don't get it. Maybe it's too early, too soon, or whatever the misalignment might be at the time. So, in terms of like consumer versus like, so B2C versus like B2B, what have you found is like a key differentiator in how you approach those growth strategies?
I think in B2B, culture plays less of an influence,
Hmm.
has less of a role
Yeah.
in how you approach things. I think culture is extremely relevant for consumer products.
Uh-huh.
You really have to either be you kind of have to be like an iconoclast of sorts to really knock a consumer product out of the park, a generalized consumer product that is. Or you need to understand a specific demographic really, really well.
Uh-huh.
It's less entrenched in the idea of business value,
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
ROI. It can be something as simple as, posting a picture online and having people tap on a little heart,
Yeah.
that it turns into a multi-billion dollar acquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck involved on
Yeah.
both sides. But yeah, I think culture is probably it's more interesting now because I think culture and technology are overlapping more now than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and I attribute this largely to, if your phone and your computer are basically your gateway into both,
Mm-hmm.
right? They collide now, right?
Yeah.
There isn't like a work computer. I mean, in some cases, there's a work computer and a personal computer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's a work phone and a personal phone, but in many cases now, it's all flowing through the same gateway.
Yeah.
And as a result, you've got a lot of like B2B, B2B to C, I don't know, like these
Yeah.
weird, funky kinds of businesses emerging because there's a little bit of everyone in these audience pools now.
Mm.
So, but at that
Yeah.
time, I think culture was the differentiator. Now it's getting really interesting. You'll see a lot of, I think you're seeing a lot of like SaaS companies invest in content and
Yeah.
creators, and distribution has become a real bottleneck for a lot of these kinds of things where traditionally it was you spin up a SaaS business and you start using paid ads, search
Mm-hmm.
ads and such
Yeah.
to get distribution. But yeah, market evolves and you got to evolve with it.
No, I think this is very interesting in terms of because I was thinking about too. I'm like, what is the value of ads now, right? Like, if you look at like even if you search Google and you have a paid ad, it's going to be like below the AI, right? Below the
Yeah, well,
AI
Google's
answer.
really interesting. Yeah, Google's really
So
interesting in that regard.
yeah. So it's like, what are you paying for if if it's not at the top like it used to be?
Yeah, advertising in general, I've always found to be really interesting because the people who do it really, really well kind of intrinsically understand how people seek out
Mm,
information,
yeah.
right? From the other side, I think this is a big reason why I mention kind of listening
Hmm.
being a key insight. If you build a business and you don't necessarily understand where your audience is coming from, it's
Hmm.
really hard to speak their language and say the things. Even if you're solving their problems, right? You still have to
Yeah.
you still have to spell it out in a way that would reach them if they ever
Hmm.
went out trying to solve the problem, right?
Right.
And I think this is a really cool thing about content these days where people are trying to like spell that out.
Hmm.
But for marketing specifically, yeah, it's the people who really understand what they're selling and who they're selling it to that
Hmm.
actually perform really well in ads. Whereas, in a lot of SaaS business, you see a lot of the same business competing
Hmm.
on, point solutions and such. But then what
Hmm.
happens is, a good example would actually be AI,
Mm.
right? How many AI products have you heard of in the past?
Like a
5
gazillion.
days. It's
Yeah.
AI this, AI that. But you
Yeah.
ask any normal person, and it's probably going to be ChatGPT that comes up, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so once you have that consumer mind share, and like once your product crosses over or reaches the culture before anyone else, it kind of prevents a lot of other. So there are a lot of advantages to being a first mover,
Hmm.
and then the challenge once again becomes like, okay, we've brought something new to the market, but now you look one layer deeper, right? You
Hmm.
would think AI is all about productivity, but you look at all the reports and people are using it for non-productive conversations for the most part, as in they're not using it for work. I think the most recent
Right.
one said like 75% or 80% is non-work related
Mm.
chats. So
Yeah.
like, what are those chats? Like, is it parents? Is it therapy? Is it something else? I don't actually know.
I mean, from what I heard, it was therapy, which
It was
a lot of
therapy.
a lot of
Okay.
people were kind of concerned with, at least therapists,
Yeah.
where it's like, well, I don't know.
It makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense to me,
Yeah.
to be honest. There's just so much, I think, I don't know. There's
Hmm.
there's there's a lot to unpack with just the implications of technology as a whole in our lives. But as it pertains to marketing, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's that
Yeah.
ability to listen and understand.
Amazing. So from or not Descript, Detour, what were you looking to learn next?
I went and did my own thing, and that was scary as hell too.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, the detour thing is the same thing again. I was like, okay, this ain't gonna be it. So I
Mm.
gotta jump. And I was still pretty excited about the idea of location technology.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I was really excited by that at Square, where like Square Cash, it was like, oh, you can pay anyone on the go. There's, lots of different things we had with like local businesses and such. That was cool. I was really obsessed with mobile devices in
Mm-hmm.
general. This is
Yeah.
where the Apple Watch was coming out. The
Mm-hmm.
iPhone was kind of maturing into a much more versatile kind of piece of hardware in our lives. It wasn't just like an internet device anymore. It was like
Mm-hmm.
a multimedia communication tool. It was a payment gateway. So all these things were kind of piling up. It's a storytelling device.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to keep going with that.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was just it was less about like I was really passionate about solving a problem or
Mm-hmm.
having a specific idea. It was just kind of like we should take a crack at this and see
Mm-hmm.
what we can do. And that led me to a whole bunch of other learnings, around
Yeah.
just being naive about a whole lot of things and not knowing what the hell I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Fundraising, incorporating a company,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could go
Yeah.
on for hours on that, but
Yeah.
the there were lots of steps I took between then and now, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the lesson, just so that I don't have to repeat myself like 50 times, I think the
Yeah.
lesson was always the same in that it was just kind of like software products as a whole or
Mm-hmm.
innovation as a whole has many dimensions to it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I started on the creative side. I had like strong fluency in basic programming, a lot of graphic design skills, and observing through, product analyst, product growth, product marketing, brand, you name it. I just
Mm-hmm.
checked off one thing after the next across
Mm-hmm.
every single place I was at, just kind of understanding what are the tools, what's the domain, what's the overlap, and just continue to push on that.
Yeah.
And as I advanced, it was just kind of updating my hypothesis as I went, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where is the market going? I don't
Mm-hmm.
have anything of my own to contribute yet,
Mm-hmm.
but what do I see happening that I want to play a part in and understand more and more? And so I started in consumer
Mm-hmm.
and I made my way into like B2B
Mm-hmm.
enterprise. And the reason for that was largely that I kind of saw this overlap kind of emerging, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when I was at Notion, it was the same exact thing, right? Like a bunch of hipsters building a note-taking app slash
Mm-hmm.
project management tool, right? But
Mm-hmm.
with like cute illustrations and such. You saw Dropbox doing I really want like when I was at Square, you already saw Dropbox kind of doing this. And I
Mm-hmm.
was so obsessed with Dropbox in the early days. Like it was just there were just so many companies I was looking at that were
Yeah.
bringing this creativity and flair. And I was possessed by it.
Mm.
You got to see all these really fantastic creatives and engineers bring a whole new dimension to software products, and that kind of unfolded right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the wave I wanted. I saw right away that was what I was. That
Yeah.
was that was my playing field, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I wanted to participate. And even up until now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most recently I started my own company, and that was following a big job at ClickUp. I was the VP of product and design there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more about, you know, leading big teams, serving big customers, understanding big business needs.
Mm-hmm.
What are those kinds of problems you're like these large organizations are faced with? And even with my own company, right? And lots of
Mm-hmm.
exciting news coming out there. But even there, it was me bringing my own philosophy about the industry, about the domain, about the product, and bringing it to life. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like my first like contribution, and it's sick. It's
Yeah.
it's sick, and
Yeah.
it feels good even up until now to think that I'm still learning.
Yeah.
It's still just another one of those jump and do it again.
Yeah. No, I think all the different roles you had, I think give you such a amazing perspective of product and growth and, business. And it doesn't matter if it's like consumer or B2B, I think you have such a diverse experience, which is incredible. Maybe I think maybe you need to do like an audiobook download of everything you've learned.
I'm really lucky. I
Yeah.
used to feel punished a lot because everyone wants to tell you you're supposed to, put years and years into places and
Mm-hmm.
and for a long time I was really scared. I think I was
Yeah.
really scared for a long time, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've known me for pretty long.
Yeah.
I'm not I don't like to listen to people in the sense that like when they're telling me what to do. I like to listen to understand, but I don't like being told what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really lucky. I think there, as much as I'd like to say that all of this was intentional, I think it was just dumb luck for the most part.
I mean, I would argue, yes, of course, there's luck, but you also have to have that willingness to be able to say, okay, I'm ready to try something new, put myself in a new uncomfortable situation where I don't know anything. And I'm here to learn and observe others and what they're doing and how they're doing it. Like that level of curiosity, I think still takes initiative, right? Like,
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
When I say luck, I don't mean like it, you know,
Yeah.
I think this is the other thing a lot of people should realize is like you got to learn how to like get good at finding luck.
Yeah.
It doesn't find you
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Yeah.
Like sure, it can every now
Mm-hmm.
and then, but I
Right.
think it becomes easier for it to find you when
Mm-hmm.
you start listening to the right things. I
Yeah.
think, in the beginning you're scared because you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to like leap because you might think, "Ah, man, I just only spent a year at this last place.
Yeah.
What if I spend less than a year here? I'm gonna jump again. Like, what are other people gonna think?
Mm-hmm.
What is my next employer gonna think? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But then you do it once, and you're like, dude, who cares?
Right.
Like, like who cares? Like, you're serving yourself and
Mm-hmm.
your own needs and your own appetite and your own interests, and so you just go again, and it becomes easier, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, okay, it's actually not that hard to go looking for what I want. And then you know how to put yourself in the presence of like I love to tell people I've never applied for a job,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like
Yeah.
ever. The only one I ever applied for was Square, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after that, so I guess never would never. That's never
Almost
is
never.
false. But yeah, but I don't apply for jobs.
Yeah.
That was one thing I realized where it was just like, okay, when I was applying for jobs at Square, I cannot tell you how many job application and this is when like the startup ecosystem is booming,
Mm-hmm.
and these were the things that I wanted to do. It wasn't like what are jobs that like I'm qualified to do. These are jobs
Mm-hmm.
that I want to do that I know
Mm-hmm.
I can do. And
Yeah.
I would pour my heart and soul into every cover letter,
Mm-hmm.
into every job, like, job form or application
Yeah.
form. And I just get nothing. One or two there from the ones that like I didn't really care all too much about, and it
Mm-hmm.
was so defeating. I was just like how,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think I'm really smart. I think I'm really capable, but like how
Right.
can this be?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started talking to people that I'm interested in working with and working for. And I was like, oh shit, like I don't have to talk, I don't have to do these like I think that I think all application tracking systems are just a freaking racket because it's just a way to, you know, collect contact information for people you probably won't hire to begin with, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone good I have ever hired has not come through a job application, it's come
Mm-hmm.
through seeking them out, right?
Mm.
And being
Yeah.
very intentional about who I want to hire, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in the same sense, I did the same, where it's just like
Yeah.
I reach out to people, I tell them why I want to work for them, what's interesting about what they're
Uh-huh.
working on to me, how I think I can be of value, and just have the conversation with them directly. And the cool thing is, with startups specifically, you're kind of a loner the whole time,
Mm.
right? Like you're
Yeah.
lucky if anyone gives a shit about what you're working on,
Yeah.
right? And some stranger comes up and is just like, "Oh, this weirdo wants to work on universal search." Like, what? Why? You guys are deeply passionate about like this thing that literally 4 people on planet Earth care about,
yeah.
but that's how you create luck, right? Sometimes the luck is, do they notice you? Do they
Hmm.
open the message, right?
Right.
But
Right.
you almost instantly reduce yourself from, or like taking yourself out from a pool of like thousands to like maybe a pool of 10,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is an underrated skill to have. Just like reaching out. Because the worst that can happen is they don't answer, I guess.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the other thing. I
yeah.
really love saying that a lot, probably to a
Yeah.
fault, but I love saying what's the worst that can happen. I
Yeah.
say that a lot to myself, actually.
Yeah. I think that that can take you pretty far because,
It can.
yeah. Because usually, also the worst, you can probably walk back, right? Most things you can kind of find your way back to at least where you are today in some
I mean, I
cases.
just think in extremes, and I'm just like, the worst is really bad, right? Like,
Yeah.
the worst is really, really bad. And, like, I can endure a lot, but the worst is really bad. Like, there's no coming back from the worst kind of thing. And so,
I guess I don't think in those extremes. I was like, oh, well, you can always go get a job. That's if it doesn't work, you go get a job.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, no, I think that's amazing advice, especially, I talked to quite a few people who are like looking for a job or they've been impacted by some sort of layoff or, change. And I think reaching out to people that you're interested in working with and also having a point of view, I think that's something that you seem to bring into these conversations, showing
Yeah, that's
that
actually
you
a really
understand.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Showing
yeah.
like you understand what they're trying to do and how you would kind of contribute or what your thoughts are and what you would like to work on and help with. Right. So I think having that clarity can help with those conversations.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I never really thought about it like that. I would say a big thing, it like over the course of however many years or my entire career or whatever, it is actually the point of view that
Hmm.
I've kind of cultivated and refined over time. Whereas like now I would say it is my point of view that is a primary driver of
Hmm.
business for me in general.
Yeah. Amazing. So I know your last company, or yeah, your last company was Highlight, right? That you co-founded, and also did some fundraising for, and kind of saw this growth. Is there anything you would like to touch on from that specific experience, especially since this is a transition from like some SaaS companies that you worked with to like more AI driven company? What's the
Um,
difference you saw there?
I think at least for me, you just can't make compromises on any front, really.
Mm.
You know, the thing that took me, ClickUp was an awesome job. Like I
Mhm.
loved it so much. It was just the most fun I've ever had in my entire career. And I actually leading that company was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do,
Mhm.
just because there was just so much growing up. Like I think as a technologist, it was up until that point, my life was as a technologist,
Mhm.
where I saw myself primarily as a technologist. And it wasn't until I got to ClickUp where I started to see myself as a leader.
Mm.
And that experience really helped me learn the fundamentals of like building teams and building with people and
Mhm.
investing in relationships, and
Mhm.
just how much that compounds just as well as any other material that you work with.
Mm.
And when I left ClickUp, I was possessed by the idea. And I think this is, just hinting at what I'm going to work on next.
Mhm.
I just became obsessed with the idea of building for people, just kind of going all the way back to what made me really happy at Starbucks and what made me
Mhm.
feel really great at Apple. It's just kind of like people are just the backbone to everything,
Yeah.
and somewhere along the way with all this like software and technology and startups and blah blah blah, like
Mhm.
people kind of fell out of the plot a little bit,
Mm. Yeah.
like I was just talking to my wife about this, and or not just about this, but
Yeah.
I used to think to myself, like, you work so hard and you get feedback like once a quarter,
Yeah.
and like I see all my friends are managers, leaders, CEOs, and all kinds of stuff, and they're doing these performance reviews and using these tools and things, and I'm just like, how do you reduce your team into a couple sentences? It's just
Hmm.
like such a stupid process.
Yeah.
Like it's just so deflating and demoralizing and uninspired. And going into highlight, I bit on the technology and not on the people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a compromise I made where I was so fixated on the opportunity to really shape my vision for
Hmm.
a new kind of product. And it helped me. I was right, which
Hmm.
was great. I got that feel like I feel more confident now than ever before that I could leave like a huge job,
Hmm.
have like extremely high conviction about something and be
Hmm.
right about it,
Yeah.
and the market kind of validating and rewarding that.
Hmm.
And I feel good that I can, this is once again, like you kind of gain that experience and that exposure and you're like, oh, okay, I did this wrong, I did this right, I feel really good about these things. Okay, jump again, begin
Mm.
again.
Yes. Yes. That is actually a meditation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beginner's mind, or what is it?
Yes.
Beginner's mind, like Zen. I forget the name. I think it's.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's right here. It's something Suzuki. It's actually sitting right here on my bookshelf.
Yep. So just the beginning again, because I think sometimes we feel really settled into something and like, oh, I know it. And then if you're really paying attention, you can kind of see like, let me come again, begin again with like a curious mind. And you observe something new and different in maybe a situation that you've seen 1,000 times before, right?
100%.
And I feel like that's your journey with startups. It's like you begin again, and each time you kind of take something new in your path. And so, and I know we've talked about this conversation with performance reviews and the different systems that are out there. And you had a lot of thoughts on it. So, is that the that the idea you're exploring next? You don't. I mean, you
Yeah,
can also not
I don't know
share.
that it's performance reviews,
Yeah.
but the really interesting thing to me now with all this stuff everyone's really focused on software
Hmm.
development with AI, and I think this whole like therapy stuff is really telling to
Mm.
me.
Hmm.
People, all it tells me is that like, people need, so people are not met with their needs as far as like support goes, I think.
Yeah.
And you can color it in all kinds of different ways, but I've lived it and I've seen it,
Hmm.
and I think there's something, I don't know what, but I think there's something really compelling about, working on something to help build people up,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
Like, if everyone now has the ability to build and do really incredible things and have super intelligence at their fingertips, well, then isn't it all about people at the end of the
Hmm.
day? And to me, I'm really excited. I don't know what that looks like. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't want to call it performance management, but I think something in that spirit is really exciting to me.
Yeah.
And I think there's a clear need for tools and products, um, and businesses that just like serve people first and kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah, I think so. I think we do have a lot of technology and a lot of different ways to connect, and at the same time, I think it's been reported that people feel disconnected the most right now. Um, and I'm sure that's a lot of different reasons, and social media is probably one of them where it kind of feels like you're connected, even though it's not genuine connection, of
I
course.
don't feel connected to anyone through social media
Yeah.
like that.
I
I
don't either, but like I think people like spend time on
yeah
it and it feels like,
yeah.
okay, I know what's happening in the
I
world.
think it fills a void. I
Yeah.
think it fills a void.
Yeah.
I
Um
just yeah. I think I ask people this all the time. I'm just like, have you ever had like a good experience being like reviewed by someone, you know?
Mhm.
Like what would you describe as like, yeah, no, exactly. Like, have you ever, aside from like getting a good performance review, like performance review is the only way to like put a label on it. But like,
Right. Yeah,
even
yeah.
coming from me, it's like, how would you score your growth,
Yeah.
right? Your
Yeah.
ambitions against where you're at now,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that whole space, like just that alone, is like is like a giant void where you're just kind of you're a victim to whatever system you fall into,
Yep.
right? And
Mhm.
then you cross your fingers, pray to, whatever entity you pray to, and
Yeah.
hope the next cycle, or the, like the next step is going to be great. And I think there has to be a way to make that more rewarding for both
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot there. And I think just like sometimes it feels like it's just like at specific periods and it's just a snapshot instead of like a video of, your year or whatever it is, right? And I think that feels very limiting to people. Like it's like, okay, but that doesn't account for all these other things I did or whatever, right? So I think how
And
do you
you probably see that firsthand, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's why being a coach is so powerful,
Yeah.
right? Like there's something really compelling and potent about having someone to help you reflect,
Yeah.
right? Someone or something to help you build that self-awareness, because at the end of the day, it really just boils down to confidence and trust
Mhm.
in yourself, right?
Yeah.
You don't feel confident, you don't trust in yourself, and so as like a result, everything downstream of it just kind of suffers, right?
True. Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's something really cool about what you get to do in a more
Mhm.
human way. It's,
Yeah,
it's incredibly valuable.
definitely. And I think the most rewarding part for me is being able to see that transformation, right? Like to kind of start with someone at a certain point and then hearing their story and their narration kind of shift and change into that more like confident or self trust. It's amazing to be a witness to that because it's like, oh, I saw when you were talking
It's your
about this like
Starbucks.
this. Yeah, this is my Starbucks. So I don't know. I love it. I never get tired of it. But really cool. I'm excited to kind of hear how that will unfold for you. I'm sure we'll catch up on that. So before we kind of wrap everything up, I usually ask for like a recommendation of like a book or any kind of tools or resources that have helped you. And I know you read a lot, so there's probably tons of things that come to your mind, but just anything recently that you're like, you know what, this was so cool and amazing. Every founder should probably go check it out.
Ugh, I don't know. I do read a lot. There's just one book I read over and over again. It's Siddhartha by Herman Hesse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a super short read. It's almost like a meditation. It's
Mm-hmm.
such a simple read. I just
Yeah.
love it so much. I really, really, really love it. It's just like a short story on growth and transformation. And, it's crazy because I read it the first time in high school. I thought it was so dumb, and and then my good friend Campo, who I think you've also met, he
Yeah, I
gave it to
have.
me.
Mhm.
He gave it to me for like a birthday years and years and years ago. And I really like the version of the book he gave me, and I read it again, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually, such a charming story.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the thing to put out there, but I think just give yourself tools to reflect. I just don't think people have enough. You're looking outward so much these days on your
Yeah.
phone, in your day to day, on like
Right.
Slack and email. You're just like looking at other people and things.
Right.
So any tools you have at your, be it a book that really makes you think, anything,
Mhm. Yeah.
journaling, it was a big one actually.
Mhm.
But yeah, anything that helps you like look in and reflect for extended periods of time, I think is deeply, deeply beneficial.
That's amazing. I do love that advice. And I think every successful like founder or CEO they do actually a lot of reflection, right? So it's like at the end of the day, like just kind of dumping, here's how I thought about this or whatever. Because I think writing has such a way to help you clarify your thoughts and make connections that you wouldn't if you just kind of let that moment pass by. So
For sure.
yeah.
For
So
sure.
super powerful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast. And I look forward to hearing more of everything that's coming out for you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Little Pursuits podcast. Please follow, subscribe, and share this with one builder who needs it. Check out the show notes for links to connect with us and our guests.